You sit by the window even though the street's dark. The curtain's edge flutters like someone just left, but no one did. They gathered without you again. The family group text buzzed earlier, full of pictures and little captions. You saw your nephew in his new shirt, your sister-in-law's potato salad, someone's laughter blurry in motion. But no one asked where you were. Not this year. Not anymore. You said you couldn't make it. You said work was busy. You said you were tired. You didn't say the truth. You didn't want to walk into that room and feel like a stranger again. You didn't want the silence after the hug, the tension in the air thick as unsaid things. So, you made soup instead. You lit the same candle you light when the ache returns. And you told yourself it's better this way, simpler, safer, quieter. But deep down, there's a whisper. One you didn't ask for. Do they still love me? You try to silence it with television, but that question sits with you like another guest. It comes back on nights like this. Not the room or the light or the creak in the hallway, but his voice. Your father. Not when he was tired or working or distant, but that rare moment he sat at the edge of your bed. He didn't say much. He just whispered, "Now." I lay me down to sleep. You were 5. He tucked the blanket to your chin. You pretended you were already asleep so he'd linger. You remember his breath catching maybe he was praying too. That night you dreamt Jesus sat on the windowsill. You didn't know his name back then, but you remember the way the air changed. Stillness. Safe. The kind you haven't felt in years. You wish you'd asked your dad more about those nights. How someone so unsure could sound so certain in prayer. Now the silence is heavier, and you wonder if he could pray like that. Maybe he knew something you forgot. Something about a God who sits with the lonely. Even now, even tonight. The soup is warm, but it doesn't help. You stir it more than you eat. The clink of metal on ceramic fills the room, the only sound you can bear. You don't turn on music. Not tonight. Worship songs feel too bright. Oldies remind you of her. News just reminds you how small your world's become. So you eat slowly. The bowl's chipped, but you won't replace it. She gave it to you. Once she laughed because you always wanted the blue one. That laugh feels like it belonged to someone else. You thought about calling her today. But what would you say, happy holiday from the one who disappeared? No. So you stir, and sip, and let the warmth coat your throat but not your heart. There's a loneliness that doesn't scream, it just stays, like a hand resting heavy on your back. You breathe, and tell yourself it's just a meal, just another night. But your eyes drift to the empty seat, and you feel the silence say what you won't. You wish it weren't like this. You wouldn't say it out loud, but you know the story. The woman who bled for 12 years. The one nobody looked at. The one they all avoided as if her pain was contagious. She didn't ask for help. She just reached. And Jesus. He stopped. In the middle of a crowd noise movement voices. He stopped for one and called her daughter. You close your eyes and whisper it. I feel like her. You haven't bled for 12 years, but your soul has. Bled in silences and misheard texts, in absence, in exile. People walk past your pain like it's inconvenient. They see your smile, not your reaching, and sometimes neither does he. At least, that's what you think. But then a memory, a moment you can't explain. That time last year when no one called and the light shifted on the floor just so, and something inside you felt seen. Was it him? You don't know. But tonight you whisper Jesus. If you're passing by again, stop for me. You tell yourself you're just checking something, a date, a name, a reminder. But you know why you're there. You've read it before the last message she sent. Short, take care. No punctuation, no warmth, no reply. You didn't respond either. Maybe that was your mistake, or hers, or both. It's strange how words on a screen can sting after so long. You still haven't deleted it. It's not hope exactly, it's habit. A way of keeping the door slightly open. But every time you look, the silence feels louder. You wonder if she checks yours. You wonder if any of them do. You press the phone to your chest like it might remember for you the things you didn't say, the love you had but couldn't show. And you whisper, God, if I'm still in their story, give me peace. And if I'm not, stay with me anyway. Then you turn the screen off and sit in the glow of absence. The room is crowded. You smell sweat dust, something baking nearby. You feel pressed in shoulder against shoulder, skin against air. But no one sees you. No one even looks. You're just another person in pain, pushed back to the edge. But then a sound, not a loud one. Just the hush that spreads when something holy is near. Jesus enters. He's not glowing, not shining, just dusty, tired looking, but unmistakably present. He turns his head slowly, not scanning, not searching, just sensing. And for a moment his eyes stop. Right where you are. No words. Just his gaze. You can't explain it, but your breathing changes. The ache doesn't vanish. But the weight shifts like someone else is carrying part of it. You want to reach out, but you don't. Still, you know he saw you. That room disappears now, but you sit in yours feeling like maybe, just maybe, that gaze is still real, still active, still searching, and still finding. You hear it. Laughter. Not cruel, not aimed at you, but full, alive. It drifts in from the hallway, someone else's joy. Neighbors maybe, family across the wall. It doesn't matter. What matters is how it lands. Not like warmth, but like glass. You weren't always like this. There was a time you joined in, brought desserts, made the jokes, lingered for one more story. Now you freeze. Because laughter means connection. And connection hurts. Because you don't know if you're allowed to have it anymore. If they think of you. If they forgive you. If they even miss you. So you stay seated. Still. Listening to the joy that passes by your door but never knocks. You try not to feel bitter. You try not to count the years, but the ache is honest, and tonight it reminds you you're still alive, still longing, still needing a place to belong. You don't hear him come in. There's no creak of floorboard, no divine light through the curtain. He's just there, sitting across the table, not saying anything, just watching, not judging, not fixing, just being. He doesn't even look especially holy. No robe, just presence. And his eyes, they're tired too, but kind. You don't ask why he came. You don't ask how he found you. You just notice how different the room feels now. The tension eases. The silence feels less sharp. You grip the bowl. He notices. He doesn't reach, but he doesn't look away. And somehow that's enough. He knows this isn't about the meal. It's about the invisible wound, the fracture in your chest where family used to live. And he doesn't fill it, but he doesn't flee from it either. He stays, like he always said he would, even when you didn't believe him. You've learned how to hide it, not just from others, but from yourself. You hold your breath when tears rise. You clench your jaw. You distract. You survive. It's been this way for years. Crying feels like surrender, and you've had to be strong for yourself, for the stories you never told, for the ones who walked away. So tonight, even with Jesus across from you, you stay silent, dry-eyed. But inside there's movement, something soft, like thawing ice. You can't name it, but it makes you press your palm to your chest, because it aches there. Not with despair, but with a strange kind of hope. One that says I might still be allowed to feel. You don't speak, you don't cry, but the silence around you hums with mercy. And for once, you don't try to escape it. You finish your soup. It's cold now, but you don't mind. Jesus hasn't moved. He doesn't need to. His presence says enough. He doesn't reach for your pain. He just makes room for it. You don't ask him to bring them back. You don't beg for reunion. Tonight isn't about that. It's about something quieter, something sacred. He knows the shape of your ache, and he doesn't rush it. He just stays. The candle flickers. The wind rattles the glass, and still he stays. Your breath slows. The question still lingers, do they love me? But another whisper rises now, even if they forget. I do not. You sit in that, not healed, but held, not whole, but no longer alone. You clear the table and leave the chair across from you undisturbed, not empty, because he is still here. It wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors, no weeping confrontation. You just didn't go back. You told them it's better this way, but that was a lie. What you meant was, I don't know how to be close anymore. They never really asked what was underneath. Maybe they were tired too. Maybe they thought distance would heal itself. But it didn't. The years just thickened. And now, on nights like this, you walk through the memory like a hallway. Still quiet. Still locked. You remember your sister watching you from the porch. Her hand lifted like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. And you didn't either. So now, here you are, years later, saying everything in your mind that you never said out loud. You whisper into the dark, I didn't know how to stay. And in that whisper, shame arrives again, soft and steady. You don't fight it. Not tonight. You just let the truth sit beside you. Not to accuse, but to finally be heard. You'd forgotten the sound until now. That slow, tender hymn. Your mother used to hum it while washing dishes, warm water, clinking plates, her quiet voice rising above it all. Just as I am, without one plea. You never asked what it meant. You just listened. Safe. You were 10 maybe younger. She didn't preach, she didn't quote scripture. But when she hummed, the whole house felt gentler, like God was closer, even in soap and silence. You think of her now, what she'd say if she saw how far you've drifted. Would she still sing that line for you? Could you ache for it? That kind of love, the kind that doesn't wait for you to clean up first. You whisper the lyric to yourself now, not quite singing but remembering, and somewhere in the quiet you feel it. Not the music, not the memory, but him, still accepting you just as you are, without one plea. You imagine it sometimes. They knock, they say your name, you open the door. They don't cry. You don't either. You just hold each other for a long time. You want that scene to be real. But when you open your eyes, nothing changes. The hallway's still empty. The night still cold. You sit back down. Disappointment doesn't even sting anymore. It's just familiar. You know why they don't come. You've made it hard, built walls out of half-spoken truths and long-held silences. You tell yourself they don't want to fix it. But part of you wonders if they're just as afraid. Afraid of saying the wrong thing. Afraid of opening what's been shut too long. You close your eyes again. Not to sleep, but to imagine one more time what healing might look like. And though the door never opens, you still wait. Because somewhere in your soul, hope hasn't fully died. It just sleeps with one ear to the hallway. You think of him, the man who swore he'd never leave, who said, even if all fall away, I won't. And then he did. 3 times. By a fire, by a stranger's question, by fear. Peter. You know that feeling too well. You didn't deny Jesus out loud, you just distanced yourself from love, from family, from the ones who once called you their own. And now the shame has settled in like dust. You can't brush it off, can't pretend you're fine. So instead, you keep your distance. Not because they cast you out, but because you can't bear to walk back in. What if they don't forgive you? What if they say you're too late? Peter probably asked the same thing. But Jesus found him anyway, on a shore, by another fire. Not to scold, but to make breakfast, to begin again. You breathe that in, and whisper, if he could call Peter, maybe he could still call me. You've told versions, pieces, the edited parts, but not the whole, not the raw, trembling truth. It's not evil, not criminal, but it's heavy and private, and it's the reason you left, or stayed away, or built walls too high to climb. You were young, scared, and you thought silence was safer. Maybe it was, but the secret stayed, tucked in letters never sent, woven into excuses you almost believed. Now it aches at odd times when someone says your name too gently, when you hear a hymn in the distance, when your nephew hugs someone else. You thought time would bury it deeper. But pain has roots, and yours still reach upward. You've never told anyone, but tonight you almost want to. Not for absolution, just to stop carrying it alone. You don't pray for release, you just whisper God. If you saw that moment and stayed anyway, then maybe I'm not beyond love. Continuing. Section 2, the stories you won't tell them. Each block continues the emotional and spiritual journey with full compliance to the structure and Jesus-centered requirements. It's dark. The air smells of smoke, maybe cedarwood. You hear the fire pop a soft crackle that stirs something ancient in you. You're standing there. You don't belong, but you linger. That's what Peter did, warming his hands over flame while his heart broke. He had just betrayed him, and still he stayed. That's where you see him, Jesus, not shining, not speaking, just being led past. But he stops and looks right at Peter, right at you, not with rage, not with shock, just knowing. And that look, it doesn't accuse. It holds. You feel that same look now, not in a vision, but in the heat of your chest as you remember what you did, who you couldn't be. You try to pull away, but something deeper keeps you here. Not punishment, but presence. He is in this moment, in the guilt, in the firelight, and in the knowing. He doesn't turn away. Neither should you. Your hand hovers over the phone. You've typed their name more than once, scrolled through the contact list slowly, as if the pace would make it easier. Tonight, you even wrote the message, thinking of you. Hope you're well, simple, gentle, safe. But you didn't send it. You hit back, erased the words. Again. Why, you ask yourself, but there's no real answer. Fear, maybe. Pride. The ache of what if they don't reply? You want them to care, but you're afraid they won't. And you don't want to feel that sting again. So you place the phone face down and tell yourself maybe next week. But your heart whispers, if not now, when? You sigh, look out the window. The sky is thick with night, stillness, but also possibility. Even silence holds a kind of grace. Maybe they're wondering too. Maybe the same hesitation lives on their side. And maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one who wants to come home. You don't see him at first. Not until your shoulders sag and your hand goes limp on the armrest. That's when you feel it, the warmth. Not heat, not fire, just presence. You glance down, and he's there, kneeling, close enough to hear your breath catch. One hand on yours, firm, steady. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. His eyes don't search for confession. They simply stay with you, like someone who knows where the pain lives but won't force you to name it. You could ask him to take it away, but tonight you don't. You just let him hold your hand. Let the silence deepen. Let the shame soften. No performance, no apology. Just presence. And the strange comfort of a God who kneels lower than your lowest place, just to sit with you there. His thumb moves a slow circle on your skin. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to believe this moment might be real. And tonight, that's enough. You open your mouth, but nothing forms. No sentence feels right. Too much time, too much pain, too many words unsaid for too long. You sit in the silence wondering if prayer needs to be spoken. But then you remember he knows. He always has. You think of every moment you almost spoke, every car ride, every walk, every sleepless night. And you realize he was there. Not waiting for eloquence, just honesty. Even now you can feel him listening, not interrupting, not rushing, not correcting, just receiving, like your silence is a language he understands. You feel your chest rise, then fall, and somewhere in the middle something releases. Not grief, not guilt, just wait. He lifts it, gently, and you say finally one word, "Stay." And in the stillness, he answers without a sound, "I already am. You haven't fixed it. You haven't called. You haven't returned. But you've been seen." And something about that changes the ache. It's still there, but not abandoned. Still raw, but wrapped. Jesus didn't hand you a solution. He gave you his nearness. That's what cradles the wound. Not a fix, a friend, not a speech, a presence. You sit a little differently now. Not straighter, but softer. Like the pain no longer owns all of you. You exhale. And for the first time in years, your shoulders drop. You might call someday. You might not. But tonight, you're not invisible. Not forgotten. You are held. And you whisper thank you for staying when I couldn't. And that whisper it carries into the dark, into your story, into his heart, and nothing is lost. You think about them again tonight, not in anger, not in longing, just wondering. Did they talk about you? Set an extra plate, even as a joke. You imagine your niece asking where you were, someone brushing it off, changing the subject. Or maybe no one mentioned you at all. That used to hurt. Now it just lingers. A quiet wondering. You aren't sure what you'd do if they invited you again. You're not ready, not fully. But it would mean something. To be thought of, to be wanted. Even if just in passing. You sigh. You're learning that missing someone doesn't always come with resolution. Sometimes it just rests there between grief and grace. You make a cup of tea, let it steep long. And while the water fogs the glass, you pray without words. Something like, "If they remember me tonight, let it be gently. And if they don't, you pray again, Lord, remember me for them." It was at Grandma's funeral. Your brother stood stiff in a suit reading from Psalm 23. He stumbled over the words a little. But you remember the line, "He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies." You always found that verse strange. Who wants to eat surrounded by enemies? Now, years later, it hits different. Because sometimes the table isn't filled with enemies, just estranged ones. Loved ones who don't feel safe anymore. Family you once held close, now held at arm's length. And yet the table is still prepared. Not by you, not for you, but by him. Maybe that's what it meant all along. Jesus laying a place for you even when no one else will. Even when the family feels far and the door stays shut. You picture that table now. Set. Waiting. Not for a performance, but for your return. He still calls you to it. Even tonight. Something's shifted. You're not sure what. But the silence no longer stings. It stretches like a blanket, not a wall. The house still creaks. The candle still flickers low. But the loneliness has softened, like someone's breathed warmth into it. You notice how your shoulders aren't tight, how your breath isn't forced. You even feel a strange kind of reverence, as if this night this empty room has become holy. You don't know why. You haven't done anything, haven't prayed harder, haven't fixed your past. But somehow God feels nearer, like the silence became a sanctuary instead of a sentence. You whisper, "Is that you?" No answer. no vision. Just peace, but real, deep. And that's new. You sit with it, grateful, still a little afraid it might vanish, but willing now to let it stay, even if no one comes back, even if you never go home. This is enough for tonight. Everyone talks about the prodigal, the lost son, the one who ran and returned. But you feel more like the other one. The brother, the one who stayed behind, did the chores, held the silence. And when the music started, he stood outside hurt. Not because of joy, but because of being forgotten. You understand that. You know what it's like to feel overlooked, to watch others be forgiven while you carry the weight. Sometimes you wonder, does God remember the ones who stayed? The ones who held the line even when it broke them? You whisper that question into the quiet, not expecting an answer. But a thought rises anyway. Maybe he left the party just for a moment to stand beside that older brother. To say, I see you too. You lean into that, into the hope that Jesus doesn't just welcome the returner, but the weary who never left. It's not a tradition, not a ritual. You just do it. Tonight, the match strikes. The wick glows. And suddenly the room changes. Just a little. Not brighter, just warmer. You stare at it, wondering what you're hoping for. Maybe light, maybe remembrance, maybe just the courage to believe again. Candles were in church, in birthdays, in your mother's window during storms. They've always meant something, even when you forgot what. Tonight, you let it mean this, I'm still here. You don't pray out loud. But lighting that candle feels close, like an act of surrender, or maybe of invitation. You sit with the flame. Let its flicker match your breathing. You don't need answers, just presence. And somehow this small fire feels like a door being opened not by you, but by him. You see him in your mind, not on a throne, not wrapped in glory, but barefoot, standing in dust, waiting. He doesn't look rushed, doesn't call out. He just watches, patient. You remember stories, the father running to the prodigal. But what if Jesus doesn't always run? What if sometimes he waits, not from distance, but from nearness? You sense it, like he's been just outside your door this whole time, never banging, never pleading, just present. Now, as you sit in your quiet house, you imagine that same dust clinging to your own feet. Because maybe you're already walking toward him, and maybe he's been here all along, closer than you thought. You don't need to reach the gate. He'll meet you where you stop, because that's the kind of God he is, the kind who waits barefoot. It slips out before you plan it. Soft, half breath. I'm still angry. At them. At yourself. Even maybe at him. You expect silence. Maybe a rebuke. But he nods. No judgment. No withdrawal. Just quiet agreement. Like he's saying, I know. You didn't expect that. Didn't expect your anger to be met with kindness. But here he is, still near. Still holding space. Even for this. It doesn't erase the fire in your chest, but it cools the edges. Like his presence wraps around the rage without asking it to leave. He doesn't ask you to change it or explain it. He just stays, and that makes you cry. Not from guilt, but from relief. because now you know even your anger isn't too much for him. No words, no command, just his hand, warm, real, weightless and grounding all at once. It lands on your shoulder as if he's always known it would. Not to control, not to heal, just to remind. You're still his, still known, still part of something bigger than this brokenness. He doesn't squeeze, doesn't lean in. He just touches. And that's enough. Enough to still the spinning. Enough to anchor the moment. You don't move, don't need to. He's not asking you to fix the past or pretend it didn't hurt. He's just with you, hand to shoulder, heart to ache. And the space between who you were and who you are becoming feels suddenly bearable. The call hasn't come. No letter, no text, nothing changed. But you did. And that's enough for now. Because tonight, loneliness didn't win. Shame didn't decide your worth. And silence didn't swallow your hope. You still wish they'd reach out. You still ache for repair. But you don't define yourself by absence anymore. Not since he stayed. Not since he saw. You fold the blanket, blow out the candle. Smile just a little. You haven't been restored to them, but you've been remembered by him. And that begins to heal something deeper. You whisper, maybe someday. And for the first time, you don't mean it as a wound. You mean it as a promise. You hear it not out loud, but unmistakably. One word. Mine. Spoken not with claim, but with tenderness, with belonging. You've waited your whole life to feel claimed by love that doesn't leave or shift or punish. And here it is, in a whisper too sacred to explain. He doesn't offer answers, doesn't rewrite your story. He just marks you with mercy. You lean into it. No one else may call, but he has. And that call is enough to close the night, to rest, to breathe. You close your eyes, not in sorrow, but in surrender. You are still family, still beloved, still held, because he calls you mine, and he means it. Pray for the ones who stayed away too long, but I didn't mean to stay away this long. I told myself they didn't care, but it's me who forgot how to reach. If you're still calling me family, please don't stop. Let me believe I can come home to you, even if I never make it back to them. Amen. You can breathe now. There's nothing more to prove no apology you have to craft before you're allowed to rest. You were seen tonight not for who you wish you were, but for who you are right here in the silence. The ache, the regret, the way your hand hovered over the phone and then trembled, all of it matters. Jesus didn't turn from any of it. He didn't rush you. He didn't ask you to be ready. He just stayed. Let that truth settle in your chest like warmth after a long walk home. You are not too late. You are not too far. Even if they never ask for you again, he already did. And he still does. So exhale. Unclench your jaw. Release the memory that tried to convince you you're unlovable. You are held. Tonight is not the end of the story. It is the moment where the light stayed on. For you. Because he stayed. If this moment met you where words have failed, if your chest softened and your silence felt less alone, then stay close. You don't need to walk through this kind of night by yourself. Subscribe so that when the ache returns, his whisper will still be within reach. Share this with someone you love who might be too afraid to speak first. Sometimes presence is the gift, not the answer. And if you feel safe to do so, I would be honored to hear your story in the comments. Was there ever a moment, a glance, a silence, a memory where you felt him stay, even when no one else did? You are not alone, and neither is your story.